Welcome back to First Light, where we talk with leaders who turn diversity into fuel and purpose into action. Today I'm joined by New Orleans trial lawyer and author Stephen Rue. Over 3 decades in the courtroom, Stephen has advocated for thousands of clients and earned top recognitions in his community. But we're going beyond verdicts into his new book, Must, Becoming the Person You Are Meant to Be, a practical playbook for transformation drawn from real stories and hard-won habits. If you felt the nudge that you built for more, and you're ready for a framework to get there, this conversation is your green light. Steve, I want to welcome you to First Light and thank you for joining me. For those who may not know you, why don't you take a second and introduce yourself for the listeners?
Thanks, Chris, for allowing me to be here today. My name's Stephen Rue. I'm an attorney by day and a personal development coach and author by night and any other time that people will allow me to do so. I've been practicing law in Louisiana for 38 years. Yes, I'm a little long in the tooth, but here I've represented thousands of clients in personal injury and wrongful death cases. We also have a family law section, and recently we've included a criminal defense section as well. And so I've been doing this and got my law degree, my MBA, got some certification in leadership at Harvard Law, and now I'm getting a doctorate degree. I'm finishing my doctorate degree in April in organizational leadership. And Chris, my dissertation's been on attorney well-being. So because I know in the legal profession, just like I'm sure so many other professions, no matter what you do, whether you're a lawyer, doctor, Indian chief, in sales, uh, a stay-at-home spouse, whatever you are, we have a lot of stress, and we need to figure out how to have the best well-being that we can have.
I got to
So
ask
that's
you.
who Stephen Rue.
I got to ask you, when did you figure all this out? Because I know as a young attorney, I struggled with it for many years. Kind of fell down the path of going out to functions and networking events, and all the time to try to get cases and network, and got down the drinking path. I was a heavy drinker prior to law school. The law school helped, and then the practice of law. So when did you kind of put all this together?
It's been a process just like anything else in life, and no one fully has it together, but we have to be content, know that we're enough, know that we're loved, and know that we're the best person we can be at this moment. But because life is about progress. To directly answer your question, my my real growth became self-evident to me upon experiencing family tragedies in my youth. My father and mother divorced when I was 6, and my father wasn't involved in my life, essentially abandoned us, my younger sister and I, for the rest of our lives. And then my mother remarried to a wonderful man named Leonard Rodney Rue. He was an eye surgeon, and we lived in Atlanta. And one summer night, he went up into the bedroom closet, put a gun in his mouth, and killed himself. And then 2 days after that, I was 11 years old at the time. I walked into my mother's room near where my stepfather had committed suicide, and um, she was on the floor on the carpet on her hands and knees, scrubbing my dead stepfather's blood out of the carpet. And she looked up at me, 11-year-old boy, and with the greatest conviction I've ever seen in my life, she says, Stephen, we have this. I will never let something like this happen to you. You always have me, and you're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. And I saw in her eyes this conviction of a declaration of her purpose for herself and for our family. And it became her must in life, MUST, her must. And then I felt as the only young son, I had to be the man of the family. So I didn't cry at the funeral. And it took me years because I had to pretend to be strong. I couldn't be vulnerable. I could not be perceived weak. And so it took me a long time and a lot of pain and suffering. And as a result of that, I built up a lot of walls. Just like you, Chris, I went out there. I live in New Orleans. So to say that we don't drink in New Orleans would not be true because we certainly do. And so we have to be careful not to drink too much. We got to figure out what's important to us in our lives. And so early on, I started devouring self improvement books from the old Jim Rohn and the Zig Ziglar to Tony Robbins. And I started to go to self improvement seminars with Tony. And I loved Les Brown books and Brian Tracy, and I've throughout the years devoured them, trying to essentially heal myself. I also I also had some. I went to a psychiatrist for around 2 years, trying to help and get through my stuff. It's not anything to be ashamed of if you need some professional help to help you with direction. I have a little skewed view on that now because I do believe to a very large degree we can, quote, heal ourselves. We can determine immediately, not wait years and years and treatment of counseling to be okay. We can be okay right now. And so, in the process of this evolution of trying to figure out myself and trying to be happy, trying to get some kind of peace, find some layer of meaning and significance in my life, I went into self improvement. And by the way, I want to talk about that for a brief moment, Chris. I wanted to be significant, which was is a very ego driven thing. We all kind of like being significant, but let's not let our desire for significance be a hurdle to a meaningful life with others. And so I was kind of going after the wrong thing, significance rather than meaning. And it took me a long time, but I had to heal myself before I could start helping others. In the midst of being a lawyer, I saw so many people come through my doors at my various offices in the greater New Orleans area, experiencing the greatest elements of pain and suffering that they've ever experienced in their life, whether it be horrible, wrongful death of family members, debilitating injuries, whether people are going through divorce and there's infidelity, or there's fighting over custody and the fact that they may lose the physical custody of their children part of the time. Family members come in because their loved one is going to lose their liberty for years because of something that they did, sometimes because of substance abuse or mental health issues. Everyone has their certain flavor of suffering that they go through. So, in the midst of practicing law, I also adapted very much of a counseling position as their lawyer. And I did that. I used that as an excuse, in all candor, because I was going to do it anyway. But my excuse was if they can be better, have greater emotional intelligence, that they can be more, they could be like Bruce Lee says, be water and kind of let things um, roll over them instead of deeply affect them. If they cannot attach the suffering to their soul, but let it be a process, then I'm helping them and I'm helping the case. In truth, I wanted to help them anyway, okay? Because I personally had experienced so much suffering in my life and saw what my mother, my younger sister, and I went through for many, many years. My turning point came. So, Chris, one of the most important times in my life was at a Tony Robbins seminar. I was there in California, sitting on a big, huge, dark, hard floor. They turn off the lights, put on some great inspirational music. But Tony says, go back to the time in your life, visualize that with your eyes closed as to when was the most significant time of a tragedy or greatest suffering in your life that in some way has really held you back. And that to me, of course, was my stepfather's suicide and the resulting aftermath from that. And as a result of that, he goes, go back into that young child, that 11-year-old boy, Steve, and feel what that young boy Steve was feeling at 11 years old, and not feeling love, feeling abandoned, feeling like maybe he had some cause in what happened, whatever. And also that he had to feel the responsibility and weight of being the man of the house. And go back as the man or woman that you are today, the individual that you are today, in the concept that in mindfulness, even if we're going through some hard times, have some fear in life, have some obstacles, at this very moment, we're okay. And we've developed a lot because we have a growth mindset. And so it says, go back to that young child, that 11-year-old Steve. And so I did. I went back in my mind, in my heart, in my soul to that 11-year-old Steve. I hugged that boy and said, I'm you. I'm here to take you back with me. You don't need to be stuck in the past. You don't need to be stuck in this torment of what you've gone through. You're okay now. And so I brought the child into the present day, saying that you are in me now, and we have gotten past that. We're stronger now. We have persevered, and you were quite courageous in the process. And so I did that, and when I opened my eyes, I felt this wave of peace that came over me because I was no longer letting the past hold me back and anchor me into negative, limiting beliefs and learned helplessness. I never would accept the concept that I was a victim again, but rather somebody that had all of the potential in the world. And it was up to me to be accountable for making the changes in my own life. And if I could help myself, then I could help others. Because I found my must in that process, like my mother did when she stood up from the ground, washing my father's blood from the carpet and telling me that we were going to be okay. That was her statement of purpose, her declaration of her intention in life. And so, my declaration and intention in life, my purpose as I found it, was to help other people that were going through their own tragedies in life, whether it be in law, through wrongful deaths, divorce, infidelity, to other circumstances that they needed a lawyer for, to even beyond that. Because my pain became my purpose, was the catalyst of my purpose. And so from that point on, I continued to learn for myself, but also for others, and realized that my desire for significance changed into a desire to become meaningful. And if I could be meaningful and get out of my own head and look outwards towards other people, that's when, as a lawyer, as an individual, as a professional, and as a human being, I could really make a difference in other people's lives and make my own life meaningful. So that's what I did. Help one individual at a time, because I wanted to speak to not a whole thousands and thousands of people, although I do. I wanted to write a book that was very personal, that people could understand my story so that they wouldn't think I was talking above them. I'm talking with them. I'm holding their hand and walking with them. And it was terribly important that I share my mother's story, my family story, my personal story, so that they could also understand that they themselves, each of us that read the book, listen to the book on Audible, or can relate to their own personal struggles. We all have our elements of suffering in life, and I've done a lot of research on this, a lot. I've done, enough to be considered the mastery of understanding from a science standpoint, and there's a certain level of art of understanding as well on how to deal with suffering. Most people go through life not really, in the subtitle of my book is becoming the person that you're meant to be, because we all already have the essence of our best selves within us. We don't have to go find it outside of ourselves. We have to find it inside of ourselves. And we have to, but the problem is that we have to figure out how to do that. Virtually everyone that I know wants to be better than they are now and wants to be better than who they have been in the past. But most people, and I'm talking about the vast majority of people, Chris, in life, do not know where to start. You go to a bookstore, you go to Amazon.com, and then there's a plethora of books out there. There's books on mindset and purpose and goal setting and time management and productivity, and books are going to tell you how to be a success financially in life and wealthy, and books are going to tell you how to be happy. But where does one start? I thought really long and hard about this. It took me 30 years of development and 3.5 years of writing this book to take not just my knowledge, but the wisdom of all of the luminaries, going back to Aristotle and Marcus Aurelius, all the way up to the present day thought leaders that are out there, to combine and give someone the best words and thoughts that are out there. So I really have, with their legacy of knowledge, trying to give the person that reads the book or listens to the book or hears one of my speeches this very same concepts. But the problem is no one knows where to start. What book do you pick up? So what I did was I created a book that basically takes the reader with me in a conversation through the yellow brick road of where to start and the building blocks necessary. You see, most people, Chris, think, oh, I've got to immediately figure out what my purpose is and everything else falls into place. There's some truth into that. However, here's the problem. Whose purpose are you living right now? Are you living your purpose, the one that's intentionally designed and created and that you were the architect of? Or are you living your parents' purpose? Are you living other mentors' purpose? Or someone else said, look, you need to be a lawyer. You need to be an Indian chief. You need to do this in life. So we really need to examine what is our purpose. And just because we're a lawyer, that doesn't necessarily mean that's our purpose in life. That's our profession. If you're a sales manager, that's your profession. But what is your purpose? They're two different things. And so the problem is that most people try to jump to purpose and jump to goal setting to accomplish their purpose in life. But the reality of it is, before we look into purpose, we have to look at what is our mindset? Do we have a growth or a fixed mindset, and why? If you're interested in personal development, chances are very high that you have a growth mindset. Anyone listening or watching this podcast right now, very highly likely has a growth mindset, which is wonderful. It's the starting point of true growth. And then we have to examine what are our core beliefs in life? What are our beliefs that were formed in our formative years about the world, other people, and ourselves? Do we believe the world is innately good or bad? Do we believe that other people are innately good or bad? Are they against us or are they for us? Are they with us or not? And how do we feel about ourselves? We need to really think about that as to what are our core beliefs. And once we establish what our core beliefs are, I want you to think, what are the top core beliefs in your life? Because I call them your must. Those are the beliefs that you need to live by that are non-negotiables. Just like my mother raising from the floor, her non-negotiable purpose was her children. What is your non-negotiable must core beliefs? And after we determine that first building block after a growth mindset, our next step up the ladder or stairs is looking at our core values in life. Because in reality, more people spend time figuring out their vacation or what they're going to have to dinner than they do figuring out what their personal values are. And so, but we have to look at our life as a spectrum of aspects of our life. I call it the circle or wheel of life. Just like looking at a pizza pie or an apple pie that are sliced into pieces. Our life has different elements of our life, of our living. We have health and vitality, We have relationships, our career, our financial well being, our growth and learning. We have our spirituality. Some of us have religion and desires for peace of mind. And then we look at the element and the piece of the pie or pizza of the wheel of life on what is our contributions to community and our legacy. All of those are various aspects of our lives. For each of those pieces of the life, the circle of life, then we decide what are our values in that. For example, what are our values in health and wellness? Is nutrition important to us? Is working out important to us? We need to prioritize what those are and then pick the top ones for now. You can always go back and add more to the list, but we can only focus on so much. And so we picked like three, two or three for each one of the areas. Write them down. So we now know what our new core beliefs are, our top must core values. And then we look at, is our personal story, when you say, I am this, I am that, is that aligned with your core beliefs and your core values? Is it? Because I ask virtually all of my clients, I give them a sheet of paper and ask them to please write down I am. And I said, I'll be back in a little bit. Please just, whatever comes into your mind, write it down. If they're in my office to begin with, as I said earlier, they're going through some hard times. And in that, there's a certain level of acceptance of victimization, of limiting beliefs, of learned helplessness that has defined themselves from their past events, from their past traumas, from their past obstacles, from their past, quote, failures in life. I'm 65 years old, so I'm a little long in the tooth. And there was an old game called Etch-a-Sketch. And you could make little designs and images on this. And if you didn't like it, you shook it up and created a new image. Well, I suggest that we need to a large degree, have a blank slate in our lives when defining who we are and what is our I am. No longer accept those things that are negative in our lives. Reevaluate those things. We need to focus on eliminating those learned helplessness and limiting beliefs that hold us back, that tell us we can't do this, that we can't do that. Some were given to us with the greatest intention of the world by our parents, by our teachers, by our loved ones, by our friends, thinking they were helping us, saying, oh, you can't run a marathon, you can't do an Ironman like you are doing. And in reality, you can. And so we need to redefine who we are. And guess what? That new story, that personal narrative must be in line with our growth mindset, our core beliefs, and our must core values. So there's an alignment. And then once we figure out what our personal story is, the new one, the one that we've written that we are a superhero in our own lives, then we must have high must standards in all of the various areas of our lives, in our health, in our relationships, in our career, in our financial well-being, in our growth and learning, in our spirituality, and in our contribution to others. What are our standards? And are we living up to those standards of our new I am, our story? Are we living up to those standards that are consistent with our values and beliefs in our growth mindset? See, we are recreating and realigning in a very methodical way going down this yellow brick road to be self-actualized to the person that you're truly meant to be. And all of these things are already in us. Our journey is inward, not outward. It's the outward stuff that has effed us up. Okay? The outward influences have changed our direction from the trajectory of who we're intended to be. It's okay to listen to people, but just because they say something doesn't mean you have to adopt it. And so after we then have all of our standards, our personal narrative, etc., then we design and create our purpose. Once we have our purpose, it's created by evaluating what has our elements of suffering in life done to us. Has that created a purpose for us? What about our passions? What are we passionate about? What are we innately good at? Look at all of these things. Write down all this stuff. Reflect on it. Let it sit and percolate for days, if not weeks. Go back to it because you want to live your purpose, not someone else's. You want to live a purpose that's aligned with your standards, your corrected personal narrative in which you're your own superhero, your values, your beliefs, and your growth mindset. This way, and I promise you, virtually no one has done this. No one has done this. If you want to, then read a book on goal setting or on purpose or mindset. That's a great time to do it when you're going through my chapters. But I tell you, all the really good stuff's already in here. And then here's the thing. That's the first part, figuring out who you are. Then we got to figure out how are we gonna satisfy our purpose in life. We do that through goal setting. Now, I'm going to admit to you something that goal setting, oh, that's such a boring old personal development, you know, concept. All the old luminaries used to talk about goal setting. My friends, goal setting is entirely one of the most important things in your life because if you don't know where you're going, then you're going to go with the wind and you're going to have no direction. You have to have control over what are your purposeful goals that are in alignment with your why of life, with your purpose in life. Figure out what each of your goals are for each of the elements of the circle of life. Most people don't do that. Oh, I want a big house. I want a great car. I want so many millions of dollars in the bank. I want a beautiful and smart spouse. I want 2.5 children. You know, that's what people say that they want. But why don't we be a little bit more disciplined and say, what are our goals that meet our purpose and are in alignment with all the other things we already talked about in each of the various elements of our circle of life, in our pie? And then prioritize them. Because the top ones that are in full alignment with our purpose are our must goals. And then we must break it down into micro goals. If we're going to run a marathon, how do I do it? Step at a time, my friend. Okay? And add from there. The incremental nature of small acts is what makes success in life. And you want to be walking in the right direction. That's why our goals have to be in alignment with our purpose and everything else that was before it. So then when we have our goals, we have to think about, okay, what are our actions that we need to address? We need specific actions. You need to live intentionally. We all are busy human beings. And there's a thing called the Eisenhower matrix, which basically says there are important things and irrelevant things, what's important, what are urgent things. And we need to pick the things that are important and urgent in our lives. Figure out whether we're going to dispense with some things, delegate to others, and only pick the what rises to the top of what's important in our lives that are fully consistent with our goals, our purpose, and everything else that we've already discussed here today. And then once we do that, we make acts, and acts now, not later. Acts now. Something immediate, even as like putting on your tennis shoes to go for a run, calling, making reservations for dinner if you're going to say you're going to go to dinner. One of the worst things I hate about people that say they're going to do something, I hate the word try. I'm going to try to lose weight. I'm going to try to stop drinking. I'm going to try I'm going to try to make your party, my friend. No, you're not. You're lying. You're lying to yourself. It's not true. It's an excuse. It's an element of procrastination. So I'm writing a side little book that I've been developing called Killing Try. Because we all need to try to eliminate the word try by not trying, by doing. Okay? See, I did it myself just then. And it's so easy to say I'm trying, and we believe it. We believe we're trying to lose weight. We believe we're going to do this. We believe we're going to do that. No, we're not. We're lying. And we feel good about saying I'm going to try. Oh, boy, that feels good. I'm going to try to go work out tomorrow. No, you're not. Put on your tennis shoes and go to the club right now. Okay? Make a little step towards that action. Because don't use the word try unless you're going to tie it and bond it to an immediate action. I tell my clients to take a pen, I give them a pen and a blank sheet of paper, and I said, here, try to write your name. And inevitably they write their name. I said, no, no, no. I said, try to write your name. And then look at me bewildered. And I said, you see, either you're doing it or you're not. So when we have our purpose, when we have our goals, when we have our actions, we need to fight our own internal mechanisms that stop us from acting. And that's why I say you have to get into the must zone. You know, I've got to create my own little zone, don't I? Everybody should. But the must zone is very important because I actually believe, after a lot of contemplation, that the paradigm of stepping out of your comfort zone is in and of itself a limiting belief. It's a limiting belief because it suggests that we must go into a kiddie pool of comfort in order to take refuge and then periodically step out to progress in our lives, to go into the fear. Malarkey. I believe that you should be in the must zone. Anyone listening to this podcast or watching this podcast is already probably in the must zone. That means we are not fearful of our fears. We address our fears. As Tony Robbins says, you should dance with your fears because you can't let fears hold you back. Instead, what we need to do is embrace them as clarion calls. They're the beautiful, wonderful clarion calls that we're alive. If you have fear, congratulations, because that means you are stepping out towards something. You're progressing. Science has said that the true element of happiness is progression. And by the way, the Harvard study says happiness is most grounded in relationships. So if we step into this world and stay out there, get used to the pressures of life, then we're in our must zone. We don't need to go back to the kiddie pool of refuge. And I think everyone should stay out in that must zone. And you're doing acts that you're feeling the pressure. It's totally okay. I got proof that I'm right about this. I'm going to ask each and every one of you right now to think of times in your life, in your past, that you thought, oh my God, my life is over financially, relationship wise, as who you are as an individual. These tragedies have occurred, these challenges have occurred. I've encountered all of these failures in my life. Life is over with as I had dreamed it. Guess what? Tomorrow was another day. Guess what? That's in your past. Guess what? You survived it. Statistically, when we fear things we fear things that haven't happened yet, okay? And we fear things out in the future. And statistically, the chances of the worst scenario is virtually never happens. It's very slight that the worst case scenario happens. Instead, we worry about it, we fret it, we stop it from our potential of growing. But guess what? You should already learn from your past. All those horrible things that you think about in your life that have defined you in some negative way don't need to define you that way anymore. And you survived them. You persevered, you had tenacity, you had grit, and you accomplished it. So let's stay in that must zone, feel the pressures, and know that we're alive. Because if we don't have pressures in life, we're either not growing or we're dead. Take your pick. Okay? So I suggest that we enjoy and change our perspective of pressures. The same thing holds true for motivation and discipline. Motivation's wonderful, but we don't grow in motivation. Motivation is like the starting gun in a race. It can only get you so far. It's discipline in your actions, fulfilling your goals that are in alignment with your intentional must purpose, that are aligned with everything else that we talked about. Discipline is what we need in life. And we should not embrace it like your parents are disciplining you. No, 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 no. Discipline is a good word. We need to rethink how we think about the word discipline. Discipline's just like the wonderful pressures of life that we feel on a regular basis when we're progressing. When you're running a little longer every day in your Ironman, when you're writing an extra page in your book, when you're getting up a little early to do your chores or do something that's important to you, do something that enhances the quality of your life. That's discipline. But discipline is your best friend. So once we accomplish all of these things, we have figured out who we're meant to be, and we're starting to figure out what we have to do in order to accomplish these intentional whys in our life. Then life happens. The last part of my book is what do we do when life happens? Because for each of us right now, I'm sorry to tell you this, you're going to have more suffering in the future. You're going to have more disappointments. You're going to have more perceived failures. You're going to have more pain and suffering in some form in your life. So, how do we address that? I've done a lot of studying on trauma and what suffering is. A lot of luminaries have said we all have these horrible tragedies and experiences and obstacles and alleged failures that happen to us. But do we attach suffering to ourselves? I have this concept in my book called the suffering basket because we need to take an inventory of all those things that we think about in our suffering. I'm lonely. I'm grieving. I'm angry. Whatever it is, I'm going to use loneliness as the example here. We're going to take the element of loneliness out of the suffering basket. Look at it at the kitchen table. We're going to objectify it and go, okay, I'm lonely. I have this loneliness. What is this loneliness? What has caused this loneliness? What can I do about it? Stop and think what we just did. We have objectified our suffering. Our suffering is not in us, it's outside of us, and we're looking at it and we're examining it. Just like we're looking at a piece of fruit. We're not the piece of fruit, it's on the table. And so when we look at it outside of ourselves, you don't say anymore, I'm a lonely man or I'm a lonely woman. You say, I have loneliness, which is an element for which we can deal with. And you can do that for each and every one of your things. And then after you have fully objectified it and be realistic, what can I do to change this? You're going to have some answers that you may not have before because you're not allowing it to be a tattoo on your soul, an integral part of your being. You're looking at it as something that is outside of yourself, that's something that, yes, may have happened to you, but it doesn't define who you are. It's not part of your I am anymore. So then you ask yourself, am I going to pour that element of suffering back into me? Or am I going to leave it on the table or dispose of it? Or do something about it now? Not try, do something about it now to change. So we look at all our elements of suffering. And then we look at something else, the light after the darkness. In suffering, we always think, oh, well, there's a great life before our moment of suffering, and there's great life after our moment of suffering. But we're miserable during our times of catastrophe, our times of obstacles, our times of failures. Really? Okay. So are you telling me that at that time of failure, of tragedy, of whatever happens to you, that you don't have blessings in life at that very moment? My friends, you have blessings before, during, and after. Yes, I said during. The very day that my stepfather committed suicide, I still had a mother. I still had a sister. I still was alive and breathing. It still, believe it or not, was a beautiful day. There are many blessings that still exist, and there are blessings that are going to continue to happen. So one of the lessons of my book, Must, is that we must change to become the person that we're intended to be. And what does that mean? We need to shift our perspective, just like my father, who had a gun in a closet when he was 36 years old. If he just changed his perspective just a few millimeters, he wouldn't have put the few ounces of pressure on that trigger and ended his life. If you have that change of perspective that tomorrow's going to be another day, and as I just told you moments ago, that you've survived everything else, nothing is that bad. And if you are listening to this and you do feel that you're that bad in bad shape, go get help. Talk to somebody. Call me up. I mean it. Call me up. We're going to work through this. Call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, but please do it because it not only affects you, it affects everyone else that loves you. You are enough. You are loved, and you can just shift your perspective right here and now. Right here and now. You might be thinking to yourself, walking down the beach, how miserable I am. Oh, I'm miserable. And some hot babe woman walks right past you. You go, whoa, it's squirrel. And that's what we need to do in our lives. We need to squirrel ourselves. When we're feeling that we're starting to get down, squirrel. What does a squirrel do? A dog sees a squirrel. All of a sudden, no matter what that dog was thinking, change its focus. And we need to change our focus just like a squirrel passes in front of us. We need to purposely create our own squirrels in life and realize we can change our perspective. That might mean getting up and out of your house, going and doing something. The best way to change your perspective is to get out of your head and go help somebody else. Talk to somebody and say, how are you today? Are you happy? You're sad? What? Oh, yeah, I kind of feel that way too. And start talking about things because the thing about suffering is that we all think that we're alone in our suffering. We're only alone of our suffering if we allow it to be. I always imagine a person alone in their house, and all of the hundreds and thousands of people in neighborhoods alone in their house. All they got to do is step outside and say hello. Okay? So there's blessings out there. We need to count our blessings, not just once in a while. We need to write down our blessings, perhaps even start our day writing down blessings that we have. Because if you count your blessings, then you will have gratitude and appreciate the grace in life. After we consider overcoming and transcending our suffering, experiencing the blessings, the gratitude and grace of life, then there are two more things I would ask that you do, and all of this is in my book in great detail, talking about the science and the art of it, is we need to love others and love ourselves. That is foundational. And we need to learn how to do that. We need to be the best friend to ourselves. Most of us don't know how to be friends to a lot of people. But the greatest person that we need to be a friend to is ourselves. And encourage ourselves and say, and you got this. We got this. That's what we need to do. And when you look at everything that we've talked about today, that is your yellow brick road of becoming really self-actualized and becoming truly who you're meant to be. I'm going to end talking about my book with one last thing. I happen to be a religious person. A lot of people aren't, and I respect that as well. And there are a lot of religions out there. To each their own. Everyone has their flavor of religion or spirituality, and that's entirely fine. As I said, I respect it. But I'm going to ask you one question. It's really very thought-provoking. Once now you've designed your own purpose in life, I'm going to ask you to maybe take a shift. What is God's purpose for you today? Does God have a different purpose than what you have now designed for yourself? And then you need to choose which should you have to be fully in alignment with who you are, not only intellectually, psychologically, but also now spiritually. So I'm going to wish that each and every one of you find your must in all of the various aspects of your life, and your life is improved by my experiences and being compelled in my must, in my purpose, to write this book and give you this message so that the suffering of my mother, my sister, and myself, and the lessons learned from the tragedies of our lives and the lessons that you are learning from the tragedies and experiences of your life have an ultimate purpose for good for yourself and for your loved ones. That is my book must, Chris.
Stephen, I love it. There's just so much in there, and it's a master class for those who are listening on who really want to change their lives. I can't wait to get through it. I ordered my copy already, and I'm reading it, and I'm super excited about it. I can't thank you enough for being on this podcast and sharing Must, and I hope that the listeners will go out and pick up Must. I know it's already won a lot of awards, #1 bestseller. So I hope everybody will pick up a copy and learn about Must.
It's at Amazon and bookstores throughout the world. So thank you so much. It's been a great honor to be here. And anyone that wants to reach out to me, they're more than welcome to do so. StephenRue.live.
All right, Stephen, thank you very much for your time. Stephen, thank you for the wisdom and the work. For listeners ready to step into their must, the book is Must, Becoming the Person You Are Meant to Be, available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. As always, keep shining your light.